This is Justice Warriors, a podcast where we think about things that are right and wrong in our world and how Christian ideas can help us respond to them. We prefer hard questions over easy answers, and we'd love you to join us in our ramblings. Listen in and contact us using the links in the show notes. Hello and welcome to Justice Warriors episode 41. My name's Andy and as usual I'm joined by Leah. Say hi, Leah.
Hi there.
And say hi, Jörg.
Hi.
We've got a bit of a delay on the line, so if we're a bit weird, that's why. But we're very happy to say we're also joined by Rima. Say hi, Rima.
Hi, Rima.
And Rima, you're someone who I think has seen a lot of different types of church and who engages in church in very interesting ways. So we thought we would get you on the podcast and ask you to talk a bit about your story and how that relates to church as part of our series about church. So would you please tell us a bit of your story?
A bit of my story? Well, I'm not sure where to start on that story. I know I can tell you one thing. So I've been at St. John's for a wee little while. Mm-hmm. And I used to, like everywhere else, just sit at the back, observing stuff. And then Leah got me involved in the eco team. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's all gone rampant here over at St. John's. That's all I can tell you that at that point in time.
So can you tell us a bit about how you ended up at St. John's, or I
came to St. John's a long time ago, maybe in about the year 2000, and used to sneak up at the back, up in the galleries, and I'd sneak up at the back, make sure that my head is down so that the vicars can't see me as I come in, or whoever's leading service, and then I'd slowly pop my head up on the galleries.
So what led you to want to hide in the back?
Oh, I don't know. It's because I always came in late. So it's a bit embarrassing, you're coming in late and everybody looks at you and kind of thing. So I found the galleries absolutely perfect to be able to sneak in and be able to sit and be quiet.
And did you have some history with church?
History with church? Yeah, I guess so. Well, it depends on what you mean by church. Church is always, everyone keeps on thinking this building is the church. And I'm finding that church is everywhere as well. So, I guess I have been to different types of churches. Charismatic churches. I think Sue, didn't she say that she was at King's Church in Staines? Yeah. I actually went to that church as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah, in the 1990s. Seems a long time ago. So who knows? I might have seen her, or who knows? I'm just trying to think who was the pastor there as well. And anyway, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, so I've been to different types of church. So I used to go to quite charismatic churches, and then I wanted something a bit quieter. And so that's why I came to St. John's, because it's a quieter service.
Right.
So that's probably about it. And then, as I said, I was running at a park run with a tyre, pulling a tyre, and Leah comes up to me and says, "Excuse me, are you the tyre lady?" And I'm going, "Well, there's a tyre behind me, I guess."
It's a bit of a dumb question.
"Oh, would you like to join our eco church team?" Going, "Oh, what does it involve?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, you just come along, you just need numbers." Anyway, and so here we are.
In my defence, I'm not even sure that I knew your name. I just knew that your email or your some handle on Facebook or something was tire lady. So I that was the only way I could start a conversation. Are you the tyre lady? But I mean, you were there pulling a tyre, so clearly you were.
Explain the tyre thing. Is it an exercise routine or what is it about?
Oh, that goes on to a big deviation and another side story.
Perfect.
So
that sounds good.
Okay, well, so stuff happens in life, and I wanted to get out of life, so I wanted to go to the North Pole. So, and as you know, there's not a lot of snow in, Egham, Surrey.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the training methods is to drag a tyre. So I was dragging tyres in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And then I challenged myself to do a marathon because it's really boring dragging tyres. And I got kicked out of Windsor Great Park as well. That's another story. So I did my first marathon in 2006.
With a tyre?
With a tyre, car tyre. That nearly wiped me out, as it were. And it was... and then I did, I think, 3 more. So 4 altogether before I went off to the North Pole.
So you did go to the North Pole?
Yeah. And dragged about a 60-kilo sled.
That's a funny thing to drop by the side. Now you got to take us to that deviation as well, Tell us about the North Pole. What did you do there, and what did you find? I mean, is it church as well?
I think church, church is a gathering of people, really, isn't it, really?
Right.
Was it church? I think for me, sometimes, I think of myself, sometimes I feel like I'm like John the Baptist, but I'm not like, not really, okay? But I've got that wild streak in me where I just want to go off and be by myself and contemplate. And like Jesus did go off and contemplate for long periods. He went off into the desert, right? So here's me going off to the North Pole just to find and go talk and it was more probably about my own self, when you're trying to find what is it, when there's so much noise in life that you need the quiet, and I thought the North Pole would be the most quiet place for me to try and get my mind together.
Did it work?
Yeah, I think so. You discover a lot more about yourself and things that you didn't think were, you don't think that you can do things, but you can do things, that kind of thing. And then obviously miracles also happen as you go along on these kind of mad things.
So what happened?
But that's only one of those things. So I'll just say for the North Pole, I guess one of the things was I had an amazing partner. She led the first women's team to the North Pole in 1997. And so she's in her 60s, and she's 5'2" and was dragging far more than I was. So she was taking an 80-kilo bulk. But as I said, it was about finding who I was. And one of the things that we had to cross was an open water lead. As we, the North Pole is on the Arctic Sea. And so as we went along, there was this great big, it looked like a big river where you've got these ice sheets and then there's a river right between. Right. And we had to cross it. So we went along it for a long while. I said, well, why don't we just cross? And there were these, I would say, like, like when you got pebbles or like rocks in the river and you try to jump from one to the other. Well, ours were floating bits of ice that we were going to jump from one to the...
What about
well, that's a great question, because I'm wearing these heavy boots. I want you to think about the kind of outfit that I'm wearing, because it's like minus 40. So I'm layered up, and it's really quite heavy. So I've probably got about 10 more kilos on me. And so she's, as I said, she's incredibly strong, and she goes from one to the other, and says, see, that's how you do it. I go, yeah, I could do that as well. So I tried to follow her lead, and I just remember I got onto the first one, which is fine. The second one was just a little bit further away, and as I tried to do my little jump over, I actually went into the sea. And I just remember I'm a lot heavier, and I remember that one of my legs, it was my left leg, went into the water, into the sea. And at this point, I probably should have gone completely, but I managed to get myself out. And she said, what did you do? I said, what do you mean? She said, you looked like you leapt out of the sea. And I got myself back onto the other one that I was on. She said, that was incredible. What did you? I said, I don't know. I'm just looked after. Okay, so that was one of those miracles that happened as I went along. And I definitely was looked after. Things happen.
And you went all the way to the North Pole and back, just to sort of 20 days or whatever it takes?
All the way to the North Pole with this other lady, yes. Wow. We don't go back. So we had a pick up from the Russians. That's another story, isn't it? Anyway, we had to pick up the Russians in this helicopter that looked like it was going to fall apart. We had to hold the door closed, and as we went flying away, and and we had to actually because it went foggy all of a sudden at the North Pole, and so we needed someone to actually just shine or just help the helicopter land. So
Right.
there's a whole big story on that. That would take another 40 minutes. So, but that's a little snippet of what happened in the North Pole, and that's probably like a wee little bit of a highlight on that. Yeah.
And other than those kind of experiences of miraculous turnarounds, was it spiritual in the other way as well? Did you find the solace, or is it in the end that your thoughts just always travel with you?
No, I do find, I mean, so, I don't know if any of you guys, whenever you guys go off, well, whenever I go, I say you guys, whenever I go off into the wilderness, I talk a lot to God. It's the best place for me to talk to God. I have to say that sometimes I find the church buildings and all the praise and everything, it's a bit noisy for me, and I can't hear. And I find that I hear best when I go out into nature, or I'm by myself cycling along on the road, and I'm talking to God all the time. I think of myself, hey, do you mind just being a bit quiet sometimes? You're chatting way too much. I don't think he does, but so when I'm out in the North Pole, I'm talking constantly, and so I'm also crying sometimes. There are revelations that you get as you're going through those moments in time, but I think that a lot of us need a bit more quiet in our approach, in our spiritual life. You look, as I said, to Jesus and John the Baptist, and a lot of the disciples all had those moments of quiet.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's
So I'm quite interested in what you heard in those moments of revelation.
in those moments of revelation. It's pretty much, Jesus died on the cross for you, mate. So, you've got to forgive, you've got to, move forward on things. And it's always about Jesus dying on the cross. I think sometimes we can go through life with those bits of whatever come onto us. And it's about forgiving. And a lot of it is about forgiving what happens to you, so that you're not carrying those burdens throughout and becoming bitter. You see a lot of bitter people, and you wonder what's happened to you in life. So,
That I love that. Walk me through that a bit more, because I mean, the Jesus died on the cross for you message can sometimes be, and now you're okay for when you die. But that's not what you say. I mean, it may also be part of the package, but what is it? How do you link Jesus died on the cross for you with forgiveness, with what's the sort of thought process for you there?
Well, he pretty much sacrificed his life for me. And so the little things that I can do, if someone hurts me maliciously with words or something, I can, I can forgive that person. I mean, these are small things compared to what Jesus has gone and done. And he had a lot of malicious words hurled at him, and, he sacrificed his life. So if he can do that for me, I must be able to do that for somebody else who is, being malicious to me. And that's basically why I went to the North Pole, because there was a lot of malicious stuff that was happening. So I went to get away.
That's extreme.
And it is a bit extreme, but it was just too noisy from family, from everybody saying blah, 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 blah. I just please, I just need to get my own thoughts together.
Was there also a climate aspect to going to the North Pole? I know you're really passionate about the planet and environmentalism and things. Did that figure, or did it enhance that? What was the relationship there?
So actually, it's an interesting question for the climate. And I didn't really know much about climate change in 2006. Mm-hmm. And all I heard was about the North Pole, and that there would be a solar eclipse going over the North Pole. Mm-hmm. So that's why I went in 2008, because I thought, well, I'm going to go see the solar eclipse in the North Pole. And so it's probably one of your more bizarre conversations. Sorry, Leah. And you were saying, I forgot it there.
So it wasn't anything about the climate crisis that inspired you to go. Did it have any impact on you about the environment, or was that just a totally separate? This was an adventure that you wanted to go on. That's totally fair enough. But since then, you have.
Yeah, so I would say no, it wasn't about the climate at the time, but everything that I've done so far. So the very first marathon that I did was to campaign about the amount of rubbish that we generate, and that we should be doing something a lot more than simply just throwing it away. So my first marathon was in Singapore in 2006, and they had no recycling. And so I campaigned and I did my thing, and they put me up on their top newspaper, front page news about this lady who's dragging a tire about recycling and trying to get recycling for home recycling. In 2010, they put in home recycling, but there was a whole lot of discussions from that point in time. In the UK was also to get the marathons, because I was shocked. Okay, the Singapore Marathon was a big eye opener when I saw the amount of rubbish that was produced. And when I came to the UK as well, coming back over, it's just the amount of rubbish that was produced. And so my whole campaign has been to go zero waste. In 2006, I was carrying my own mug around. I was carrying my own plate, cutlery, and everything else that comes along with if I had to eat out. The climate side came in 2008, when I started to understand that we have a problem. And so that's when the realization came, boom, there is something that I needed to research further into, and not just think just about the waste, but also about what's happening on our impact on the environment itself.
So where do you think this passion for the waste and for the environment comes from? And is it related with your relationship with God?
See, that's if I go right back into time, when I was probably about 5 years old. It feels like regression analysis here. 5 years old, I remember opening up presents, and
you're on the couch.
I am on the couch. I remember opening up presents very, very carefully, and then wanting to use these, the gift wrap, to rewrap other presents that my mother wanted me to help her with, like for birthdays and for Christmases, and her saying, no, we don't do that. We always give new wrapping paper. And at that age, I do remember that, because it was a bit of a surprise to me. Okay. And I believe that God or his angels have always been with me, protecting me throughout. Because as I said, the North Pole is only an instance of one of those things that have happened, and probably I should have died many, many times through the ages, from when I was a kid to now. And so no, I've always felt very protected. So maybe I've always had some sort of a relationship. I got baptized probably in 1990 something. I couldn't tell you what it was anymore, but 1990 something, and that was at King's Church.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why I was Sue went to King's Church. Yeah. Interesting.
So this passion was in you from very early.
It's been there, yeah. And when Leah said, "Oh, do you want to be part of the Eco Church?" I go, and you go away and do your prayers and stuff. And I said, yeah, that really makes sense. This is God's creation, and yeah, I do want to be a part of it, and to start getting others to see how easy, or maybe it's not so easy for them, but getting them to just see about God's creation and what we can do to protect God's creation, because we're a part of it. We are a creation, and so is everything else. And if we don't care about it, then they're boom. And so that's how I came to this whole part. Does that?
Yeah.
And you've done other journeys on foot or by bike with kind of climate campaigning involved as well, haven't you? Thinking around the COP and...
Oh, 29. So this, well, first of all, I should go back to the, if you want to know about that, that's, after doing the North Pole, okay, that was in 2008, I did one more. I was actually injuring on every single marathon that I did. I had Achilles injury, plantar fasciitis, what is it, when shin splints, and I can't remember. I've had 4 different things, and it really frustrated me. So I retrained how to run. And in 2010, or at the end of 2009, the instructor said, you're good to go. You'll be able to run a marathon in any shoes. So I did my first, I said in 2010, I'm going to do 10 marathons with my tire, just to prove that it was got nothing to do with the tire. I'm going to use any shoes that I want to use. So I run in sandals. And I met this lady who was, I don't know, 70 or 80 years old. And she says, oh, I've done 200 marathons. Why don't you join the 100 marathon club? This is on the 7th marathon that I'm doing. Why don't you join the 100 marathon club? And I go like, you've done 200 and what marathons? Okay. I said, well, I better do it with a tire because, I'm meeting the 70, 80-year-old lady. I'll just do it with a tire and I'll do 100 marathons. You're right. And, I agreed with her at that point in time. And so that's where I came upon this doing 100 marathons. And so then I somehow, along as I've done my campaigning, about rubbish and everything else, I became an ambassador for a lot of the marathons about waste and about sustainability and about the climate. And so at some point in time, so I started off with Nice Marathon, and then Geneva Marathon wanted me to go and be their ambassador, a sustainability ambassador. And another event called Mouillolonga-sur-Mar, which is in Trieste, said, would you come and be our sustainability ambassador? Now, both of them said that they'd fly me over. Mm-hmm. And I said, you must be kidding. You can't fly me over and call me your sustainability ambassador. And I said to Trieste, in fact, both Trieste and Geneva, I said, I'm going to do a big, bold thing. And I want you guys to pledge to do a big, bold thing, okay? I'm going to cycle to your events from the UK, from my home. I'm going to cycle over to Trieste, and then I'm going to go over to Geneva, and I'm going to cycle back. And so that's when I started doing all the long cycling. And that's also another big story, but we won't have time for those
and
stories.
You were campaigning a lot about plastic bottles and plastic cups. You're trying to get these marathons to go cup free. That's been quite a lot of it, isn't it?
What single-use plastic has been a big agenda for me, as you know. Plastic, when it's in the ocean, a lot of it's been dumped in the ocean. Plastic, when it's in the sunlight, is photodegrading, and it creates ethylene gas. It was found by some Hawaiian researcher. And so, of course, ethylene is, it's a big greenhouse gas. Okay. So, yes, get rid of your single-use plastic. Start thinking a bit more about your circular economy and what you can do. So in 2018, I got the first UK marathons to actually go. They're only small marathons, but to actually get rid of all their cups. They were using reusable bottles to serve water, and they got rid of the T-shirt that everybody gets, the technical T-shirts. If you wanted it, you could have the kind of a buy-in for a T-shirt, and then one of them got rid of it totally. So it was amazing, and they were shocked about the amount of rubbish that they didn't pick up. So an event of 2,000 participants had 2 van loads of white van loads of rubbish before, so about 4 years before. On their 5th year, they had 2 carrier bags of rubbish that they were taking away with them. And that's the big difference. So you can think about the amount of, when we talk about greenhouse gases, that plastic waste that they were going to get rid of would have gone to some landfill at the time, or might have been shipped off somewhere, because we were shipping off in the UK our rubbish off to different countries, and we still do, unfortunately, which is the really sad thing. Yeah.
Those who died are justified for wearing the badge. They're the chosen whites. The justified. Those that died, they're the chosen whites.
So I think a lot of people listening to this podcast probably spend a lot of our time feeling frustrated that we don't know what we can do. And it feels to me like you've done some things that have been quite effective. So was it in your mind were you trying to be effective? Do you have like strategies for being an effective campaigner? Did you just get lucky? What happened there?
Oh, good question. About being an effective campaigner. I think it's about evolution. You know, you evolve things. It's like the community fridge is evolving. Everything, every initiative that you do evolves. When I look at the guys who have been campaigning about or trying to raise awareness about climate change, and they say, I'm going off to the North Pole or the South Pole, and I want to raise this amount of money, and I want to raise awareness about the greenhouse gases and climate change. And I kind of thought, because I actually wanted to go to the South Pole as well, by the way, and I stopped it because of climate change. And I said, I don't want to do it anymore. It's not in my thing to do. And I want to find adventures that are probably more sustainable and more, I say eco-friendly, as it were. So I think it's evolved rather than I knew what I was doing. I knew I wanted to do it for the long game. I didn't want to do it for the short game. So a lot of the guys, again, I see that they do their campaign, you see them and then they're gone. And so that's where I said, okay, to this lady, I will drag my tire for 100 marathons and I'm going to do it over, I think 2006 when I was supposed to finish. I was supposed to have finished in 2020. Okay, and then of course COVID came along and everything else. But yeah.
So where are you at now?
86.
86, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like you're going to get there then.
Yeah. Well, I've had some slight delays as well as COVID and well, other stuff that comes along in life. Yeah, and then so that knocks you out. So I did have cancer last year as well, which was a pretty amazing experience as well. And and then having to be forced to stay out of action, because every time that you try to do anything, well, anytime I tried to do anything, I just started bleeding, and it's like, no, the doctor says stop doing anything. So then that's when I started up the community fridge. I thought that's a good deviation to put my energies into.
That's not doing nothing, though, is it? I love that your version of resting was starting the community fridge.
Right. So explain the community fridge for our listeners. What is it, and how does it tie in with the rest of your activities?
Yeah, so everything's been about waste for me, and when you look at waste, there's a lot of carbon generating activity, pointless carbon generating that has happened, and food is one of those where the UK produces 9 million tons of food waste. That was in 2019 and onwards, has actually generated a lot of food waste which could have been eaten. And so it's kind of a shock, and you think, well, what could I do? And Englefield Green up there, the village centre, had created their community fridge. And I talked to Judah St. John's about, creating a community fridge, but I didn't want to lead it. I got to say, I was a bit like Jonah. I kind of knew that I should, but I didn't. So I went off. Judah says, okay, we're going to need a leader. We're going to have to pray about it. I said, yeah, okay, you pray. I'm going to go off and go help somebody else. And so I went over to Talking Tree because they were starting up, and I went to help them. And in October, basically, end of September, they said, we're not doing things right. We're going to have to close down, and we won't reopen until January 2023. And everybody looks back to me and says, come on, you've got to open something. And I'm going, are you kidding me? Anyway, so I opened something. So and it was at the right time anyway, because as I said, it stopped me from trying to run and cycle stupid distances and those kind of things. Yeah.
So I can't really let you get away with saying that you had cancer and it was amazing without explaining a little bit what you mean by that.
I think I did a testimony actually at church on that. It's been an amazing journey. If I just say in 2021, it's probably I started getting white hairs in 2021, by the way, because I wasn't sleeping. And when I say I wasn't sleeping, I was probably getting about 10 hours a week of sleep, and it was really, really bad. But not only that, I was just bleeding all the time. Can I say those kind of things? Anyway, I could say anything, right? But so there was something wrong. But 2021, COVID, I didn't want to go to the doctor. And then other things started going wrong with my body. And I remember having done a 24-hour run. And then 2 days later, my left leg got stuck in one position. It was locked. The knee was locked. And I was trying to open it. And after probably about an hour and a half, I actually prized it open and probably injured myself at the same time. My mother comes in 2022, I'm still bleeding, and says, you got to go to the doctor. Anyway, go to doctor, and you know that something's wrong, right? You just know that something's wrong, and the doctor says, oh, okay, sends me off to go get some tests, and I remember, so the first real test was say, and they do this very quickly. I was so impressed with the NHS, by the way. You know, it was in 2-week chunks. So 2 weeks, I think that was about May time. 2 weeks, I went and saw one who went and did one check and then said, nope, you're going to have to go see the gynecologist. And I go, oh, really? You know, anyway, for all the women out there, it's, you know, I just don't like things being, well, you know, poked up. I remember going and they have to take a sample because there's something wrong and they need to get in there and pull out a sample from your uterus, basically. And there's things I don't want to say, but the consultant at the time wasn't happy to just do that without anaesthetic, because of my certain background. And I said, well, I really don't want to go under anaesthetic because I've done it once and it was not a good experience for me. And he says, okay, well, I'm not happy about doing it. I said, well, what if we pray? Can we pray about this before we do anything? He says, okay, well, I just checked with my other nurses. So we had 2 nurses. They checked with me. They say, oh, yeah, that's all right. I say, okay, I'm gonna pray with you all. And they get you on this chair. And again, you know, for the gynecologist, so women can just imagine. And for the guys, I just say, you know, they put you upside down and everything. And he says, do you want to be in position? I said, absolutely not. Right. So I'm going to sit there and we're all going to pray. Is that okay? I said, yeah. So we have this prayer. And I got to say, there was something happening in that room. It's just amazing. And anyway, he gets me on and maybe he was just a really nice consultant. I don't know. But nothing really. The first time when he was first going through and then they were trying to put some cameras through and everything else, he says, okay, this is going to feel very uncomfortable. So I did my prayers. Things are going really well. And then all I could think is, okay, I'm just going to breathe in peace and breathe out discomfort. Okay, so that's all that was going in and out. And then the next one, he says, okay, most women feel pain at this point in time. And so this is where they start to do the scratching and take out the pieces of whatever they need to take out. I say, okay, I'm just going to breathe in love and I'm going to breathe out pain. And I'm saying this and the nurses and the doctors say, okay, this is really amazing. Are you sure you're okay? I said, yeah, keep going. That's all I'm doing. And listen, this is really amazing. At the end of it, okay, so everything went fantastically well. It was a short procedure, which he was totally amazed about. And then his last things were, perhaps we should do a prayer with everybody before we do these procedures. Now, I've spoken to 2 other people who have had these procedures, and they've both been in pain. And so I came out there and I'm on a little bit of a cloud here, just singing praises as I go out of the hospital and everything else. So that was the first thing. Okay, later on they say, okay, you've got cancer. I go, oh, okay. I'm not going to do anything about it was my first reaction. You know, I'm going to just pray about it. I had Iris pray over me and I said, well, I think that I'm healed. Okay. But in the back of me, you know, there's always that, you know, well, you should, you know, maybe just go for the operation. As far as I was concerned, I was healed. Had a lot of people talking to me, you know, that's why I said people, you know, too many people talk to me. So I decided to go for the operation. I said on one condition, that I get to pray with everybody before, you know, the operation happens. And when I went to the hospital, I have to tell you that I did cycle 10 miles and I ran in a 5 mile before the operation. I, you know, went into the ward and introduced myself to everybody. Hi, everybody, I'm Rima, you know. And so there were 5 women in there. 3 had a knee replacement. and one had a hip replacement and one was leaving. And I remember this lady saying she had diabetes, and she says, I should have been out, but, they've kept me in because my diabetes has gone through the roof. I said, okay. Anyway, I go off for my surgery, and, they want to get everything in, right? Okay, we're going to put you in. Hey, I said, no, wait, hang on about. Can I please have, and I did a song request as well. I said, I want Creation Care. Mm-hmm. Okay, playing when I go in, and so will I, and I can get a little bit teary on this, but it's anyway. I did my prayers, and that was it was incredible. The door was opened, and I had also prayed for having a women's team, mm-hmm. and I had a women's team. There was one guy, but it was a total women's team that I was seen to. And when I came out, I was, they pull you into a ward with other people, and I was going through the shakes, and I'm just praying. And one of the guys, he's saying, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, no, God's got it. Don't you worry." And anyway, I'm all okay, and then I'm praying for this lady who has diabetes, and I'm not unhappy, by the way. I don't know why but as I go back through the wards, just saying hello to everybody, I felt like it's probably like Majesty, hello everybody. Go back to my ward, and and I'm just praying for the women inside the ward. The three of them, apparently, two of them had fevers. There was a third older lady who was really, really struggling, hadn't walked, actually, and hadn't tried out her new knees. And the two others were just had fevers. And the other lady who had diabetes. Anyway, I was probably on a bit of a high inside the ward as well. They were giving me oxygen as well because my blood pressure went down so low. And in the morning, I'm up, and I've had a great sleep. I've had an amazing sleep. And, I greet the diabetes lady, and she says, "I don't know what you were on, but you were just talking rubbish when you came in. Absolutely rubbish." I said, "No, actually, I was praying that you'd be able to go home today." Mm-hmm. And she said, "Oh, that would be so nice." And I don't think she really believed that would happen. Anyway, I gave her a prayer poem, and I had also been praying for the other two, as I said, who had fevers, and this other lady who hadn't moved from her bed. Later on, for that day, probably in the afternoon, they keep us there. The doctors actually said her blood sugar had gone down. It was actually at a good level. It was 5, and she couldn't believe it. I said, "Does that mean you're going home?" She said, "Yeah, that means I'm going home." Mm-hmm. She thought that she'd be going home at the end of the week. Mm-hmm. So my operation was on the Monday, and she was out on the Tuesday. So the other two, so one of the ladies had dressed. I said, "That's a great idea. I want to go home too as well. I don't really want to stay in the hospital." And the other lady, Mama, everyone's saying, "Hello, Mama." And I said, so 2 Muslim and 1 Hindu lady. I said, "Everything's going to be great for you guys. Don't you worry." The Mama actually tried to get up and walk after seeing me. They all thought I was a goner, by the way, when I said, "I got cancer, guys, but don't worry, it'll be fine." At the very beginning, Mama tried to walk to the bathroom. That was the first time that she had ever done it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so she's been in the hospital for, I think, about 3 days. The other two they're all similar. And the other two, they still had their fevers, apparently. I called a couple of days later because one of them, I said, I had this amazing sleep, and one of them said, "Oh, the orderly who was there, he was really noisy because his phone was pinging." And I remember hearing the pings, but I had earplugs. Mm-hmm. And he was eating his sweets throughout the night. Mm-hmm. So she couldn't sleep because he was right close to her. When I called 2 days later, all of them had gone. They had all gone home. The ward said, "This is the first time that we have been cleared since COVID." And we've got nobody. So we're, Anyway, so those are things that happen.
And now you do what they tell you. And now
So you had this visceral experience of God's care for you, God's presence with you?
Oh, always.
Always?
Always.
Okay.
He's always there. He's always there. And I'm very, very well looked after. Yeah.
And does that teach you anything? Like, what do you learn from?
It means you just keep going forward. So when God asks you to do something, it's to be bold. You know, I think a lot of us are scared to do things because we're worried that it's not going to go right. We're going to fail. I think a lot of people are scared about failing. When you ask me, you know, did I have a plan? I had no plan. And if I failed, I failed. Okay? I didn't even have money to go to the North Pole. And if I failed, I failed. But you just need to go forward. God, it's always in God's hands. And so this is, I guess, what this has all taught me.
So I wanted to ask you about the money. How did you get the money to go to the North Pole?
Oh, that was, I don't know. People just give you money at times, you know. You say you're going to do these things. And at the time, I guess in that period, I think it's different now, but in that period, you know, it's about inspiration, you know, about what young women, if you remember, women weren't always the most, you know, we're not looked as being very strong or... I don't know. You know how it is. You know, the men, you know, yay, the men. But men are great, okay? I don't have any problems about the men, but I guess it's a woman who is, you know, I just remember I just say in New York, okay, when I was doing the New York Marathon in 2007, and there was this whole lot of, what do you think you're doing? And these are all the guys, okay? What do you think you're doing? Take the tire off. Who do you think you are? And, you know, just getting a whole lot of verbal abuse for dragging a tire in the New York Marathon. And someone said to me, you know why? And it was all men, by the way. It's because the men hadn't thought about it. So they're all jealous. But,
well, they knew they couldn't do it.
I don't know. I think they can, but, you know, it is a mental thing. It really is a mental thing to be able to drag a tire, and that's what dragging a tire has taught me for the North Pole. I could have failed in the North Pole as well, but it's about training yourself to I think it's that our limitations are only limited by what we think that we're limited by. And you know, as I said, you know, God's always kept me and looked after me extremely well. So there's another story I could tell you about.
Go on then.
It's about when I went to the Sinai Desert. You know, again.
Did you go to the Sinai Desert?
Well, okay, so I went on. I broke my ankle in 1995 or 1996, and it was a very bad break. It was broken in 3 places. Anyway, so one of the things that I did to sort of like, I thought I'd go to the Sinai to do some scuba diving. We'd do it in Sharm el Sheikh. Got a whole group out there, and I was going to stay on for 2 weeks because I didn't want to just do the scuba diving and go. I wanted to go out and you know, because Moses was out there, wasn't he? Sinai Desert, Moses, you know, hey, and I'm going to go out there, go Sinai, you know, mountain and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I was, I don't know, preyed upon by the Egyptian men as I was there. So I remember sort of like at one point in time, the security guard following me. I used to sleep outside, okay, on the floor. And on a bright full moon, the security guard following me and then wanting to make love to me. That was in his words, make love to me. You know, I had to fend him off, say, you know, where you know, you're my brother, and, you know, stopping short of the cliff face that was probably about 20 meters away from where I was, sitting down and saying, no, you know, this isn't going to happen. Anyway, I was just really fed up with the Egyptian men, and so I decided to walk out into the Sinai Desert. Because if Moses can, so could I. And so I stayed out there for about 4 days. And that was there's so many more stories that would wind into.
What did you eat and drink?
I brought out some bread. Manna, right? I was thinking manna. But I brought out bread, and I brought out this TVP that I'm supposed to cook. I had I thought I saw myself, I was a bit probably like Bear Grylls, though I didn't know Bear Grylls at the time. And I thought, well, maybe I can make my own fire. And I had probably about a small box of matches with 5 matches in it for my 4 days. And I'm going to make a fire, and I'm going to cook this TVP over.
TVP?
Textured vegetarian protein.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I went out there, and I couldn't light a fire at all. I now know how to light a fire, but I couldn't light a fire at the time. I go, this is really bad. So I just ate this bread, and I ate this raw TVP. And, I had brought out 4 large 2.5 litre bottles of water. Oh dear, there's more stories. Okay, so when I walked out...
You truly are John the Baptist.
There was this big rocky outcrop. Okay, so if you've ever been to the Sinai Desert, there's like one rocky outcrop that side, one rocky outcrop that side. And I remember before going to the Sinai Desert, the agent, the travel agent who sold me the tickets, he said, if you see any barbed wire, do not go beyond it, because there's a lot of landmines because of the fight between Israel and Egypt. I said, okay, I wouldn't do that. Anyway, so there's this rocky outcrop. I've gone up through this valley. There's a rocky outcrop on the right and the left, and it goes on and on. And I found this kind of like gap between it, and there was this dead goat. It was in half, and I was saying, oh, okay, God, if you're talking to me, you're saying don't go this way, right? And then you know how it goes. And then as I look right to the right hand side, I look right to the left, I said, this goes on forever. It's probably my imagination. I'm just going to step over the goat. And that's what I did. And then you see like these little, in Singapore, right? When you see like little pellets, it's because they got military training. Right, so like all the gun pellets, right. Yeah. So I see all these little shells, and that's all okay. I see half a shoe there, I see half a shoe there. I don't think anything of it. I see these like little, probably like bombs or missiles that are left there, and I go, this is really interesting. And I'm also seeing these little shiny round things that are all around, and I'm saying, I wonder if this is okay, this is really stupid. Okay, so I was so naive. I wonder if they're just like tins or cans, I don't know what all these cans are. That's really amazing. And I'm very careful, but I can see everything. And I've probably walked about 200 meters to another rocky outcrop. And then I realized how stupid I was. And I see it everywhere. I said, oh my goodness, okay, Lord. Okay, well, if I die, God, you're going to have to tell my mother about me and where my pieces are. And anyway, it's sort of like, at those points you go through prayer, and I swear I felt that my hand was being held, and I knew which direction I needed to go. And so I didn't go back the way that I came. I went towards another rocky outcrop, and I climbed up the rocks, and that's like one of those amazing things. And I decided to sleep up on this rocky outcrop. It was probably about, I don't know, yay high, probably about 5-story high, and I wanted to watch Haley Bop that was actually going over at the time. It was spectacular. And so there's actually a fall on both sides, and I probably had a width of about that width to sleep on. So it was a ridge, and I thought I'm going to sleep there.
About a metre wide?
Yeah, about a metre wide. And then I put some rocks on both sides of me, so in case that if I rolled over, in the hope that I might feel the rocks. And then if they fell, maybe I might hear, it's so stupid, that I might hear the rocks falling down on the ground. Anyway, nothing happened to me. I'm here today. But it was spectacular and amazing. I had a magic time out there. I can only again say that I was very well looked after. So I'm giving you when I'm 5, there's other stuff that have happened. But those are probably the 2 major things.
So you seem to be sometimes driven by a need to be away, to be alone.
Yes, I'm actually probably here's the funny thing. When I go through all those tests, it comes out that I'm an introvert, and I do like to be by myself.
Yeah.
So
you can't get energy from there.
Oh yes, definitely. I get my energy from being out in nature. Nature energizes me. If I'm feeling low, I just have to get out. Yeah.
No, I can relate to that, really, the nature bit. I don't always have the energy to campaign. So how does that connect for you? Do you, people don't always, they don't necessarily come on board with what you're asking, or Do you ever sit out in nature and you see all the rubbish and you think, well, why do I bother? Because a lot of these things are almost feeling symbolic or prophetic, as it were. You know, we might recycle food in Egham through the community fridge, or, you know, we might not use plastic cups at marathons, but then all this aluminum gets thrown away as well. So, like, how do you connect that? Like,
so I think it goes back to Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
You know, go right to the very start. And why did God put us on this planet? You know, so I just asked that question back. Why did God put us back on this planet? What for? I mean, I know to praise God and everything else, but there was a bit more to it than that. I feel that it was to look after the world that He created as well. Mm-hmm. You know, we were caretakers basically for it. That's how I feel about it. Mm-hmm. And I feel that, so if there's rubbish, there's a place that I will go back to. I just went swimming in the lake on Saturday, and I'll go back and I'll go clear up that rubbish. It's fantastic there. But there was just a lot of, So, and I forgot the point about what about the community fridge? The community fridge is about reducing food waste. So, sorry, we had a deviation. It was about reducing food waste and seeing that I could, and Talking Tree did help me on this. There's a lady called Debbie who showed me about how to get on with how to collect food from the different supermarkets, and it is through like brokers. So we collect now for St. John's through 3 different brokers. One is Neighbourly, another one Fair Share, and Surplus to Supper. So it's all about reducing food waste first. If we can't distribute this food, it will be wasted.
So the brokers get food from people like supermarkets? Yeah,
so the Surplus to Supper, for example, they centralise the food collections. So during COVID, lots of charities go to the different supermarkets, and the supermarkets feel overwhelmed. So if they can centralise it, which is what Surplus to Supper does, and then let Surplus to Supper deal with the donations of the food. So we pick up one is Surplus to Supper. The other one is so we pick up directly from Chertsey, Sainsbury, and the Co-op, and then just Tesco and Waitrose here. And as I say to people, because they say, no, I don't need it. I said, this does actually help those who need it. And anybody who needs, please do come and see us. But secondly, it is also about reducing food waste. So at the end of the day, if I can't get rid of it, I will also have to throw it. In fact, I feed the cows with it. So we often have more than enough for everybody, anybody who wants to come. We are collecting about sometimes nearly 300 kilos of food. Now, some of that food goes throughout the St. John's ministries. So we look at the community kitchen because this is good food. I often ask somebody, how do you know who gave this best before to this banana? Or who gave this best before to this courgette? How does it know that it's going to no longer be any good after that time? So, and, I look at the banana situation because in Asia, our bananas are often, brown with spots on it, and we think that's really good. Or they could be even black, and we still eat them, and we think that's really good, as long as it's not sort of like squidgy. And that's and now I can even tell you that's not too bad. I make jam out of it. But here in the UK, you get your nice green, yellowy bananas, and it has this best before when it's still. For me, it's not ripe. So what is ripe? And I think it's different people have different definitions of what a best before means. And that's the same with the courgette, who gave that definition. So, yeah, we have plenty. We probably get 30, 40 regulars. Actually more than that now. We're getting about 70 regulars coming in. It started pretty small, and now it's about 70 regulars. And we still have food to give away at the end. I am still trying to get rid of this food. Wow. So please, anybody who's listening, come to the Caddy every Saturday between 11 and 1 o'clock, and please take away some bread or vegetables. We always have enough we will always have something to give away. So, yeah. And then, as I said, there are recipients inside the church, inside St. John's itself. who will get to that. Again, these are models that I've learned from Talking Tree, for example, and the village centre. They take all the surplus and use it in their cafes. They don't buy any food, and they sell that food off to the general public. Okay, you see what I'm saying? So I feel that, our community kitchen, as long as the food is good, can also use that food, as well as other of the ministries. So, yeah.
So I've got two people in my head who might be listening to this. And the first person is, I can imagine a young person who is full of energy and frustration about climate crisis, but doesn't know what to do. So do you have any advice? Like, you seem to have picked things to do very effectively. Or, like, if you don't know what to do, how do you approach that?
I think, that's a good question. I mean, I get criticised a lot. You also must know that I get criticised a lot. So I go to Singapore, right? My family's in Singapore, but I also pick up projects in there. So the criticism that people say is that you flew to Singapore. And in fact, even when I went to Rome, and I was working in Rome, and I did the Rome Marathon, and some Australian lady came at me and said, "You flew over here, and just went on and on and on." And I'm going like, well, what did you do? But she was just going on. And so I just kind of had to walk away from her. I think it's a difficult one. What do they do? And I think what they can do is to learn to collaborate with others, find a group that will help them to shape and to form ideas and how they can campaign and to go forward. I think there can be people who can stop them, but I think when the heart is right, when the mind is right, when the cause is right, there's no stopping. As they say, there's no stopping this church, isn't it? So, so in Singapore, if I can engage with 50,000 and get them going, or even the British Embassy, I've managed to get them to go towards zero waste way before their time, engaging with 50,000 participants to get them to think about bringing their own bottle, and doing other things to reduce their own impact on our world, and thinking about things like carbon offsetting and, or their carbon handprint. Carbon handprint?
What's a carbon handprint?
Carbon handprint is what you do for the environment.
Right.
Yeah. So you've got your carbon footprint and your carbon handprint. And see how that all balances off.
Fantastic. Okay, so find people.
Yeah, find people, find groups that you can work with. And I think, St. John's has some good stuff. But I would say that I would look at like Talking Tree, who are much more passionate, sorry, St. John's, but that are a lot more passionate about the climate crisis. I look at, Extinction Rebellion, if they wanted to see creative campaigning, and it gets people talking. I know some people go, well, it's really negative. And I say, well, it got you talking about it. And now you know about the insulation problem, and now you know about this. But it's got us talking. So I think it's to find the thing that works for them. I don't know, is it basically groups?
Right.
I know I've been an individual, but lately, when I met Leah, I was already on that journey that I needed to find a collaboration rather than do it myself. Right. So Leah, you stepped in at the right time, the perfect time to actually pull me in to St. John's to do stuff.
Well, I was thinking when you were linking earlier collecting rubbish to caring for the garden, as it were, in Genesis 1. You are already working in a collective. You're picking up somebody else's trash. You're not saying, I'm only going to care for plants or nature. You are already sort of extending that to the people around you. And I think that's actually a good call to say, well, don't complain about the rubbish. Don't complain about what others do. Like my son and I sometimes go and pick up rubbish, but he finds it very hard. He sees why do people throw it away? But what you are challenging people to do is to say, well, no, see that as part of your caring. You're caring for a weaker one who's right next to you. You're caring for another human being who can't respect. God's environment just yet. So you don't give up because you understand that you're part of a collective and you do care for the other's lapses, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say you've got that spot on. You know, if I just looked at everything and say, well, somebody else did it, and there's always that blame, you know, it was somebody else who did it, why should I do it? Then actually nothing would get done. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of passionate people who are willing to do things.
But there's an interesting thing. There's an interesting idea of church. Like, I mean, just thinking about this, like you said earlier, you know, I forgive because Jesus forgave. It's a very spiritual thing to do. But actually in your life, you're doing the same thing. You're saying, well, my community is everybody around me. And of course I'm going to pick up rubbish. Of course I'm going to try and move them. Because I'm not going to let them get stuck in that. I'm not going to blame. I'm not going to judge them. I'm just going to try and move them. I find that very encouraging. Because a lot of the activism can be about judging, can be about, you know, let's move your attitude. And you just say, well, let's change stuff and move on.
And definitely, I really hate wallowing in the negatives. And, you know...
I'm getting that from you.
Yeah. You know, it's throughout the Bible as well, you know. It's about the spirits of anger and despair and everything else. You know, God always says, you know, focus, you know, look for the spirit of love and peace and, you know, all of those kind of things. You know, what's it, 1 Corinthians 12, isn't it? About love. And, you know, so there's a whole focus in the Bible about just keep your eyes focused on the positives. What is it? Keep your head up and your heart strong, you know, kind of thing.
So that leads me directly to the second person that I had in my head, right? So the second person who might be listening to this podcast is someone who cares about this stuff, but just feels hopeless, feels like feels despair, that there's no chance we'll be able to prevent the worst things from happening. So how do you keep from ending up in that place? Maybe it never crosses your mind.
No, it has crossed my mind. I mean, I remember as a teenager actually crying a lot because I really hated how the world was going. And thinking, you know, so I understand where they're coming from. And at this time, if it's a young person, it does feel overwhelming. But at this moment in time, I'm not going to let it stop me. You know, I will do what I can. Now, I would say to both of these folk, if that's where they're feeling at the moment, is start small. Look inside first. See what you can do first in your own home, maybe in your schools, with your own families, and see what can be done in that side. Go to groups, as I said. You know, I think that they will start to see the opportunity. It's always about the mind having to grow. And if anything, throughout my life, what I've learned is that my mind is growing all the time. It's evolving all the time. The community fridge is evolving. When we talk about church, do you know, I pray with those people who wait outside. We've got about 30 people who queue outside the community fridge. I've got now people apologizing when they're late. I go, you're apologizing for not being at, you know, for prayers. And I go, this is incredible. And, you know, we're praying, you know, I say, what do you guys want anything prayed for? You know, the first time I did that, nobody would say anything. I said, what are we happy about? They just said, oh, the community fridge is open. Last week, I asked everybody, you know, does anybody want prayer? I had one person say, yeah, I'd like prayer for my back. I'd like prayer for another one saying for my knee. And these are all different races. And, you know, another one saying, you know, I'd like prayer for my family. And it just went on. And it's like incredible. I was like, Lord, this is amazing. You know, I got Mandy to do the prayer, by the way. But so I collected all these prayers, gave it to Mandy, said, here you go, Mandy. How about doing a prayer for us? Because she was in the queue. I go, oh, sorry, Mandy. But yeah, and it was just amazing. And I just remember 2 or 3 people who came up to me and said, I'm so sorry, we missed that, because they're normally there in the queue. We missed the prayers today. I go, wow, that's amazing. So I don't know if that becomes their church now, you know, where the church grounds, you know, it becomes a place where they can gather, and that becomes church, where they can now they're talking to each other and talking sometimes about God. You know, we've got other Christians who are in there, and there's it's fantastic. There's a really nice connection in there. I'd like our next service to be outside in the wild, by the way.
I'm with you on that one.
Out by a lake somewhere. Jörg, would you be interested?
Well, I love
to
I
lead
love
a session.
nature. I love being outside.
Oh.
Yeah.
Jörg's accidentally volunteered.
That'd be amazing, because I want people to be able to bring their pets as well.
Oh gosh.
You know, if they can bring their animals.
But I'm fascinated by like this expansion of church that you're bringing. So on the one hand, you say, well, when I'm outside, I always talk to God. I love being outside. It settles me. I don't necessarily talk, but I listen, and it's a very church thing for me as well. So you're expanding it that way, but you also say, well, whatever you do, your activism, forgiving somebody who's hurt you, settling things with your family, that too is church. And now community fridges. And I'm not even sure it needs to be the prayer. It's the connecting with people's stories and giving them hope, or sharing in the hope rather than giving hope. So I quite like that idea of church.
Yeah, being in hope. But you're quite right. Sorry, I say I chatter a lot, but I also do a lot of listening. But I always think that I'm talking more to God when I'm outside rather than when I'm here, or trying to do a prayer with somebody. I find it when I've got the music blasting and lots of people around me, it's very distracting. So I do need the quiet over everything else. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I think what's interesting to me is we would all share that thing of being out in nature and having a connection with God, and then being in a building with a lot of people and not necessarily always feeling that connection. So what do we do to bring those two things together, being able to be in nature with other people and kind of still have that communal connection with God? Is it something as simple as taking a sort of service kind of format and taking it outside, or is there something different?
Can I ask that back to everybody else? What do you guys think? It's a great question, but it's
I don't know how to connect with God in any place, so I'm no good at.
Except for a certain festival. Or
See, I find even the festivals noisy. So I'm much better, as I said, just being by myself. Yeah. But, going up, I think sometimes when you think that you haven't connected and just going up, it's facing a fear. It's being bold, basically. When you start to be bold and, as it were, step off the cliff, I think you just have to believe that God is going to be there to catch you, enable you to fly. I was just singing, when I was just coming back from Twickenham, I'm flying. But it is about, I think, trust. I think we often want to trust our human senses rather than our spiritual senses. And I think when you can start to go beyond that, every one of us will fly. It's incredible. And to feel that connection, and I'm hearing this quite a bit actually, even in our church, I don't feel kind of connected, there's that, I'm losing the connection. And I think that for us Christians, it's just learning, how do I step out? How do I step out into something that I'm really uncomfortable with, but I'm going to trust that God's going to keep us safe. So, I've taken loads of people out of mountains that they don't like. There's a particular one that I really like because it's one of those knife edge, it drops on both sides. I haven't lost anybody yet, which is a good thing. Crib Goth? Arvin Snow. You do know it? Yeah, so Leah knows. It's a lovely mountain, isn't it? Lovely ridge as well to go along and get people facing some of their fears. And just then learning to, refocus on, if they just refocus on, just Jesus and just singing praises, I think it'd be fine. I simplify it.
Yeah, so Leah, I don't think we have any answers to your question.
Yeah, sorry, Leah, that's too hard for me. As I said, my only suggestion is that Jörg comes in and does a service outside and we find a lake and bring lots of people if they want to come. Anybody wants to come. For different types of service.
For disappointment.
It might be, but we'll never know if we don't ever try it. We should try it and evolve it.
I like that, but there's a bit in me as well that says, do not put your Lord to the test in a way. So that like you really do have the boldness of a John the Baptist. I'm just going to be out there. I'm not going to ask any questions, and I think that is an amazing gift. But is there also a place where, I don't know, when obviously you prepare stuff as well. You don't just go to the North Pole. You learn how to do it. You don't just start a community fridge. There's some rules that you have to work with. So it's not always that Jesus is going to carry you through, right? I mean, that's what gives you energy, but like you prepare, you
prepare as much as possible. So I don't just pick myself up and go to the North Pole.
Mm-hmm.
That would be, I would say that would be pretty crazy to do. I think that God would say, well, I did warn you about that. You'd lose your hand because you got frostbite and but it is all about preparation. So everything that I have done is to research and find out about things. The whole dragging the tire thing was by researching and talking to a lot of polar explorers. Mm-hmm. It also helps about the fear, because as I said, we don't know our our limitations. We think we know our limitations, and even the old folk. I can't do that, but they think they know their limitations, but they don't. Mm-hmm. I think none of us know our limitations, and it's only when we learn to prepare ourselves to go forward with something that has been done before. I mean, many people have gone to the North Pole, but I agree with you, Jörg, that there's a lot of preparation. I think probably the least prepared that I've been is so even for a marathon, dragging a tire in my very first marathon, I did prepare. Mm-hmm. I did do runs and stuff like that. There is a certain things that you have to do. There was another thing that I had to prepare for, but that I didn't prepare, and that was actually Leah wanted to ask me about this. Was I cycled off to? When I cycled off in 2019 to Trieste, I actually wasn't prepared. The longest cycle ride I had done was 20 miles, and I didn't know the bike. It was given to me 2 weeks before I left. And on the first day, I think the gears fell off and I got a flat tire. And, I didn't really know how to fix my own flat tire. And I didn't know how to... I do now. Okay. But, yeah. And then in 2021, wasn't it? Was COP26. Was to go off to COP from here to going from Anchorwick, because that was where Magna Carta. So we changed it to about the creation, looking after creation care, to going up to, I think it's where they signed the women's rights. It's another tree up in Glasgow. And I decided, well, we should have all generations. So I found myself a grandmother and her granddaughter, and got them to come along with me to Scotland. And we spoke at 13 schools. And the grandmother was amazing. And the granddaughter...
Was this walking?
Cycling. We cycled up, yeah. It took about 21 days because we were visiting all these schools. And one of my things, so each of us had to have a place that we wanted to sleep in. I think the grandmother was in a barn, so we got her barn. The 13-year-old was sleeping wild, and we definitely slept wild quite a few times. And my one was to sleep in a church. I can't believe how difficult it is to go and sleep in a church. But I did manage to do it. Those Yorkshire people up there, they are so friendly. Right. Yeah. Anyway, so I got to sleep in a church up there.
Yeah, you have to wait until the service is on, then you can sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Rima, thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing your energy and your vision.
Yeah.
And we even got some advice out of you here and there. So thank you so much. It's amazing to hear a tiny bit. I feel like there's like hundreds more things that you could have told us. But thank you so much for being with us.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jörg and Leah.
Thank you. And listener, we'll see you next time. You've been listening to Justice Warriors. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and you can also follow us on social media by searching for Justice Warriors, where warrior is spelt like someone who worries about things. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating, since that helps other people find us. Also, please tell your friends about us in real life. We'd love to hear from you. To get in touch, use the email address in the show notes or contact us via the social media links. Thanks for listening.
Now you do what they told you. Now you do what they told you.